And then finally, here's something that I also saw in SCORE, and you see in a lot of games. People want a vision. Now, I'm trying to say this carefully because a lot of people talk about Sims and games like that that are open-ended sandbox games. And Animal Crossing, another good example. A lot of games that cater more to females don't have the same kind of male dominance. I'm going to defeat this thing and then I won kind of thing. They're more open-ended. They have a more lengthy experience. But even every one of those games that's successful, like Sims, still has little points of progress that I can always look to. I'm going to make my house bigger. I'm going to start raising a family. I'm going to start doing this. I want to get this. Oh, I want to meet that person. I want to pick up this thing. It all deals with things that you can still acquire that are unique and interesting and have some sort of forward-moving momentum that makes me feel like I'm making it somewhere. When you deal with a game like SCORE, you get to the space level, you start expanding out, and then you realize that everything's exactly the same, and it's humongous, and there's nowhere to go, and you have like one sort of goal that's so far out there that you can't really even tell whether it's that interesting, and you expand to a certain level, and then it just gets tedious to manage because, well, you're running out going to see a star, one of your planets is getting attacked by pirates, and you run back to attack pirates, and then you go back out to explore a little bit more, and then somebody else needs an ecological disaster, and you have to go back and save that, and you go back out, and then you have two kinds of disasters, three kinds of disasters, I think, that can happen. And you basically just keep coming back to deal with those, and then doing a little bit of exploring, and you don't really get anywhere. So it does have this sense of achievements, which I think are a really good thing. That's a kind of a place where you can go with additional vision, but those are achieved. The ones that you think are worth achieving that you can with whatever race you're in, get done pretty quick, and then you're left with this humongous universe with no motivation to really go explore it. So it's something we have to be careful of. So within our games, we kind of want to keep people having a sense of where they're going, something to be excited about, and generally, this is one of the places where the emotional pieces come in. We can give them something that they're emotionally attached to. That's an opportunity to move forward. Okay, time to put fun to work. So, in the process of making your game, we've already talked about a lot of the concepts that I would say are the base ideas. You start with, let me find a game that I think is fun, let me find something that's fun, let me figure out how it's fun, why it's fun, can I add to that, can I extend that, and you come up with kind of an initial vision for that. So take the enjoyable core concepts for your game, start with those and build a vision around that. So many people start with game design, and I know I'm going to sound kind of bigoted on this, but they start with game design based on something that's not dealing with the playability of the game, it's dealing with the theme of the game or the idea of the game. I'm going to put you in this kind of an environment, and you'll be in, Rome at the time of Christ or whatever, and that's my game design. Well, that's not a game, that's a world design, it's an environment design. And so many games that I've seen started with that, and then somewhere along the line they started throwing in the game playability options, and in the end they might have a beautiful world, but the game's not fun to play. If you want to make something fun, you start with the fun, you start with the playability. And I firmly believe that successful games start with gameplay. So, and it's not just me when I say I believe, so does Blizzard Entertainment. And they've said that in no uncertain terms, that they start with the game, they start with the playability concepts, and then they start adding in art, adding in trappings. I think when they made Diablo 2, they had within 2 weeks a running version of the game playability engine already going, and they beat it to pieces trying to test all the stuff out of it and make sure everything worked, and that it was fun to play. And their goal right from the beginning was, we're going to make this really, really fun to play, and then they started adding all the stuff onto it. And so for 2 years of game design, they had a working game engine that they kept refining how much fun it was to play, and then adding the trappings on. So, and obviously, if any of you guys follow game design or Blizzard Entertainment, you know that anything Blizzard makes turns to gold. And people go, wow, how did they do that? Here's how they do it. They start with making the game fun, and then they add the stuff on it. And they start with making the prototype right away, and then they keep testing it. Yes?
And they're willing to throw finished products away if they decide they're not fun at the end.
Yeah. Well, and that's why they prototype it right away. They'll go a distance down the road, and then they can say, okay, we're just going to step back here because that didn't work out. And they can throw a whole branch of development off because, hey, we decided, without having to get all the way to the end of the product, but yeah. And that's kind of the agile methodology as well. So figure out whether your games are fun first. Start with a vision for your game. So that's the same thing I've heard a lot of people come to me and say, okay, I've got this idea for a game. What makes it fun? If you can't sit down and say, using these mental, you know, what we talk about, mental archetypes, and I'm going to have this emotional thing, and I'm going to have this, and like food, you got to look at them and say, do they actually go together? So, you know, I've got Twinkies, and I've got carrots, and I've got, you know, squash, and I've got a little bit of frosting, and I think it's going to work great. And, you know,
the spirit with them.
yeah, sorry about that. I know you're sick back there. Okay, so figure out what your vision is, figure out why it works, and be able to say, this is what's going to make my game fun, and start with that. Get that down, and then start building the rest of all the trappings and the trimmings around the game, saying, okay, well this goes along with that idea. So once you have a good feeling what makes your game fun, start adding the trappings, sound, content, all that kind of stuff can start coming on later. But as soon as possible, you want to get a playable game out there. Another bad example, I saw some good friends of ours actually got quite a bit of money to write a game on an interesting concept. And unfortunately, the guy who was running the project was an art director. And so he started making all the art assets and all the other stuff and sent somebody off to do the rest of the game playability. And after they got a ways into it, they started bringing all this stuff together, and just the game just wasn't any fun. They couldn't actually get the game to really be playable. They never actually finished the product after spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. The game just got tossed because it was a really good opportunity because they didn't have the game playability in the beginning. It wasn't until the end when they started trying to add all the rest of the stuff and start seeing whether this was any worth playing, and they just couldn't make it work. All right, and then, believe it or not, the final slide. Don't kill your fun with flavor. So this is the other thing that once again, I see a lot of Christian games do this. We've talked about a couple facets where this happens, but you say, you know what, I'm going to take this really good idea for a game that's out there, or maybe a pre-existing game, and then I'm going to shift it into Christian content. And in the process of shifting into Christian content, because they didn't pay attention to what made the original game fun, the new game isn't nearly as fun. And as Christians, I feel like, skipping to the end here, but we need to do things that stand out, that are good, that make people go, wow, that was like that other game, only better. It was more fun. And so often you kind of see this thing where we take a good secular game or a secular concept, and then we pull it into the Christian context and nerf it in the process. But I see things like that all the time where it's like it's a worldly game that deals with, obviously, with greed. Well, we're going to make it a Christian game, but it still has the same greed concept in it, or it still has the same non-cooperative play that's actually being mean to other people. So even though we might say it's good, when you look at the game mechanics, you're being mean to other people to actually progress in the game. It doesn't mean that we have to play a game that all we get along nice, but we need to figure out what the context is for competition, where that actually works, and how we can make the game fun without stepping on the toes of what God's already ordained context for us enjoying an experience is. Strive to be better. As Christians, we should be able to take the things that are fun and make them more fun. We should be able to take the emotional experiences and make them more in context and more enjoyable. We should be able to take the things that already work within games in the world and make them better. And it's not really our place to try and take this stuff, say we're going to pick it up, nerf it, and then end up with something that just isn't quite the same. We have an opportunity to make things better, and although we may not be able to compete on the level of artistic quality or sound quality, or voice actors, or full motion video, gameplay is someplace where not only can we compete, I think we can excel. And so this seems like just such a place for us as Christians to take the time to say, what is emotionally compelling about games? What does make this fun? Why do we as humans like to do this? And how can I leverage this to make the absolute most enjoyable experience that I can? And blow people away. I don't know.